When I was a young man, there was a poster in my high school room from Winston Churchill. Life success is a series of overcoming failures. Well, over the years, I've always remembered that. And today we have with us someone who's written a book along the same lines, which I find fascinating. So we asked Max, Max James to join us and tell us first about himself, then about his business career, and then finally his book and where we can get it. Max, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Don, and good morning to you.
Good morning. So, Max, tell us a little bit about yourself personally.
Okay. I was born with a great heritage. I grew up on a farm. My dad was a sharecropper and one of the greatest entrepreneurs I ever met. I guess most farmers are, if you think about it. So at any event, I ended up with telling stories about this background of mine, which I'll give you a little background on. And finally, people would say, "Oh my goodness, that's unbelievable! You should write a book." And so I sold my last company and talked to Jack Canfield, and he said, "Yeah, I think you should write the book." So it all started out on the farm, and I followed two gray mules up and down those dusty roads in West Tennessee. And my dad was a phenomenal mentor for me and gave me every opportunity. In fact, I don't know how he did all that he did for me. My mom died when I was 13 years old from a brain tumor. And so dad was a single father farmer and a very successful one before it was all over. And so that was my first foray into being exposed to an entrepreneur and a great, great mentor. My best year in high school was my junior year. My senior year, I busted a lip, lost some teeth in a basketball game, and things just didn't go as well for me my senior year. And so I got a chance to go to Washington, D.C. and be the administrative assistant to a congressman. Let me tell you something, for an old farm boy, that was tall cotton.
I well, I haven't heard that expression in a long time.
Anyway. Well, you may hear it several times today because I kept getting into taller and taller cotton, which was really a fantastic experience for me and led to some successes. At any event, so I went to Washington, D.C. at the age of 17, and I loved it. Politics and power gets addictive if you're not careful. And I, at 17, was pretty much addicted to that big city coming out of a little farm in Tennessee. So Fats Everett, Congressman Robert A. Fats Everett was my congressman. He got about 95% of the vote every time for Tennessee. He was a true politician. He did what the voters in Tennessee asked him to do. So I learned that lesson too. You first have to learn to follow before you learn to lead, or before you can lead. So I was the chauffeur for him. I chauffeured Senator Kefauver, the senator from Tennessee that ran for his party's nomination for president. And I chauffeured the governor and his family when they came up. I'd take them to the Senate beanery, and oh, it was just fantastic. And I wrote all the newsletters and sent them back to the little newspapers in the small towns in Tennessee. And so finally, Fats said, "Max, how'd you like my job?" And I said, "Oh my goodness, I mean, what are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, I'm not going to live forever or be here forever. Maybe we can set you up to run for my seat when I retire." I said, "Oh, that'd be fantastic." He said, "Okay, we got to fill some boxes. First of all, you need to go back to Humboldt, Tennessee and finish high school." I said, "Fats, sir, I really don't want to go back there. It's not like this place." He said, "Okay, fine. Here's the first, we'll do it by correspondence." And I said, "Sir, Humboldt, Tennessee doesn't have a correspondence course for graduating from high school." He said, "Here's the first lesson in becoming a congressman. For a congressman, they do." And so he called the chairman of the school board and said, "I got one of your youngins up here and he's doing mighty fine. I'm proud of him. I need a favor, Harold." He's a banker, as I recall. "I want you to call the principal at his school, or the superintendent of his school, and tell him to have his teacher send all of his books up here. I'll make sure he does the homework. I'll even make sure he takes the test. Tell you what, I'll even do this. I'll send him home for finals." Holy cow. So that's what happened. And I did. I went home and I graduated third in the class, not a big class, but I graduated third, which irritated some of the teachers since they didn't have much of a hand in my last education. And then he said, okay, you got to go to college. I said, Vance, I got to tell you, we don't have any money, not enough to really send me off to college. And I haven't done much about getting a scholarship. He said, lesson number 2, the government will pay for almost anything. So I want you to go down to Nashville to the Air Force Base there, and I want you to take all the exams for the military academies, West Point, Coast Guard, Annapolis, and that new one, the Air Force Academy. I did, and I applied to the Air Force Academy and eventually got accepted. And Fat said, oh, this is great. Those folks back home, they love military men. So we just checked off another box. At any rate, I will stop with all the mentoring that I got from this wonderful man. And I did. I went off the Air Force Academy, did quite well there, a lot of extracurricular activities and well in military training, and graduated in the top 10% of the class. I had my problems there. I had to learn a lot about the military because I knew nothing about it when I went off. My dad had been in a security guard at an armory during World War II, and that was about the only uniform I'd ever seen. So anyway, I graduated from the academy. My class, the class of 1964, was either lucky or unlucky, depending on your attitude. We graduated, went to pilot training, and went right off to war. I had one short stint, about a year, flying with the astronauts down at Cape Kennedy, Cape Canaveral then, and flying helicopters. That was my choice. And I was part of the helicopter rescue program for the astronauts and got to know them all, and Walter Cronkite and all the guys. But when the war came along, I volunteered. It seemed like that's what I had been trained to do. And so off I went to Vietnam and Laos. There was no war in Laos at the time I went over, 1966. It was still a secret war. And so we didn't wear insignia on the ground at all. We were actually flying with Air America, CIA, but we were the Jolly Green Giants. The Jolly Green Giants became the most decorated organization of all during the Vietnam War. And our job was to rescue pilots when they were shot down. It was a wonderful mission, just wonderful. It didn't matter what kind of war it was. Our job was to bring those guys home rather than have them go to the Hanoi Hilton or worse yet, maybe not make it at all. And so it was wonderful, and came back. I got lucky. I picked up 10 guys, brought home 10 pilots, and I managed somehow or another to get shot down twice myself, and was picked up by other Jolly Greens, and we made it home. So that's a background up through the military. I came home and was a combat instructor pilot. I then resigned my commission and went to Stanford Graduate School of Business and picked up my MBA there. Went to work initially for the world's richest man, which was really tall cotton, Don. I mean, you're talking about tall cotton, flying around in our own plane and having conference and business meetings on the yacht and so forth. But we were in Mallorca on the boat, and I crawled up on what I call the poop tower, up where all the antenna are. And we're sliding back into the bay of Mallorca at Malaga. And I'm up there and I'm waving to all the tourists dressed in Bermuda shorts and Madras shirts and straw hats. And they were me. And I had this epiphany and said, I've lost my perspective. I probably am being paid less per year than it costs to run this yacht for one day. And so on the way back to Beirut, at that point in time, I resigned and went back to the States and got a job running a real estate company. From the real estate company, I moved up from the Bay Area. I moved up to Sacramento, wanted to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond, I think, that old Southern expression. And did well, ended up taking a job as one of the executive vice presidents of Days Inns of America when we were the 6th largest lodging chain in the world. It was a great experience. I was a partner with Cecil Day for all the Western states. And from there, I just had that itch, if you will, to become an entrepreneur, to own my own business. And that was the start of this entrepreneurial journey that I've been on for the last 30 years.
Hmm. What was your last company?
My last company was American Kiosk Management and North American Kiosk. And I had met Guthy Renker, Bill Guthy and Greg Renker of the Guthy Renker Company, the infomercial kings, if you will. And I was able to convince them to give me the exclusive rights to market their product at retail. In other words, I didn't have the online business at all, but I did have the exclusive right to market their major product, which was an acne skin treatment called Proactiv. And so I became a partner with Guthy Renker, and we both own North American Kiosk. And we built that business in a 15-year period to $1.8 billion. Yep. So that was the end of the tall cotton story.
But it seems that along the way, you didn't seem to overcome anything. You just seemed to jump from success to success.
Well, I guess when you tell the story, you like to hit the high points, okay? But there were so many failures in there, and as has been said by a lot of people, you probably learn more from your failures than you do your successes.
Well, before we go any further,
yeah.
Show your book and the name of your book and where you can get it.
Okay. Well, here's the book. It's The Harder I Fall, the Higher I Bounce. Sorry about the reflections. And it says Life Lessons from the Entrepreneur Dubbed the King of Kiosk by Fortune Magazine.
Okay.
So Fortune did a major story about my and my wife's last big success. And it was in shopping retail down the hallways of the major malls around the world, but particularly in the United States. There's those kiosks where mostly mom and pops are selling all kinds of different products. I had been introduced to that in a former company that I was in. I had a master distributorship for a diet pill, and it was just phenomenal. We made a lot of money, $30,000, $40,000, $70,000 a month. It was a network marketing company structure. And so I didn't have any downline in that. I just focused on selling the product. And it's the only network marketing company that I'm aware of that allowed the distributors to sell at retail, because that obviously conflicts with the individuals that are out there selling it door to door, mom and dad, and friends and family. So that ended because it was determined that an ingredient in that diet pill, ephedrine, increased your metabolism, and that could be dangerous if you had a heart condition. So the company immediately closed the ability to sell that diet pill, and they eventually sold to a pharmaceutical company. So there was a failure, and one of the chapters in this book is it ain't always your fault when a business fails, and that was a good example. But because we were so successful in the kiosk business in shopping malls, we had over 400 manned kiosks. And then we moved into what they call automated retail, Don, and most of us would think of that as vending machines. You've seen them in the airports selling all kinds of computer gear and so forth. We sold Proactiv out of those. We had 800 of those. And so that became really a huge business and the biggest success that I've had. I had other successes. I owned 7 Remax territories until the recession hit. Remember when interest rates went to 20%? Mm-hmm. Well, there weren't a lot of houses being sold then. And so I had to fold that company. And I had one major investor, which I refer to in the book. He backed me and in the expansion that I did there. And when I went in for the second tranche, raising money from him, he said, okay, bring me the paperwork and I'll sign it. And I said, I already have the paperwork. He said, that's one of the reasons I'm going to back you. You're always well prepared. But in any event, while he was signing the paperwork, I kept talking about how great we were doing. And he put his pencil down, Don, and he said, Max, listen to me. Stop talking. Shut up. I've already said yes.
Yes.
Talking, and there's a good chance you might say something that I hadn't thought of that I disagree with. So that chapter in the book is don't sell past the close. But I could probably name 24 easily businesses that I tried to put into the malls, into kiosks. Some worked for a short period of time, some worked for maybe a year or so, but eventually I had to close them all down. And so I know failure. I know failure very, very well. In fact, the first business out of Stanford failed. And it was a shared office lease program. And the landlord filed bankruptcy and then sued me. But he wasn't even providing electricity or water, and which was my contract. And so I learned about legal blackmail. My attorney said, Max, you were obviously right. You can win this lawsuit, but it's going to cost you more to win than he's asking you to settle. So that was my first experience with legal blackmail, but I've had some more since then, but I was smarter about it. One of my solutions, Don, was the next time I went into business, I took a lawyer with me and gave him stock for legal services. That way, I never had to face corporate lawyers that were on the corporate payroll already, and I was having to pay for the legal services. Another little tip. I failed a lot, Don. I failed a lot. And what's fun in the book is that I talk about those failures, oftentimes in a humorous way, because it was then entertaining as to how it came about. But I'd say maybe I've had 10 failures, somewhere between 5 and 10 failures for every success. Resilience, determination, just not giving up. You know, the two words that are similar. There's burnout, where you say, that's it, I've had it. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm just closing shop. I'm going to go find a job. That's burnout. Or there's brownout. Say, well, we made some mistakes. Some things happened we weren't anticipating, but this is just a brownout. The power will come back on. I've got it in my gut somewhere not to give up. Just determination. I'm going to get this thing done.
But isn't that the mark of a true entrepreneur? Not giving up?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I've said I'm probably not going to write another book. At this age, I need to take a break. But the next book would have been, and there are some articles that are being written, it's called Fail Fast, Fall Forward. In other words, cut your losses early. That's a chapter in the book too. You get in there and you find out it's not working. You've got bad people or bad product, close it down and go to the next one. Dr. Robert Schuller, from the Hour of Power,
right.
Crystal Cathedral, was a good friend of mine, spiritual mentor, if you will. And Dr. Schuller has a theory called peak to peak, P-E-A-K to peak. So you're climbed up this mountain, and that's been a lot of fun, and you finally plant your flagpole on top, right? And now you look around and there's some taller mountains, and you think, you know, I'm gonna go climb that mountain. You know what you have to do first? You have to go down in the valley. Can't jump from one peak to the other. You got to go down in the valley and start over. And so sometimes I went down in the valley or partway toward the valley in a very painful way. I mean, failure is just not fun. Okay, it's painful. But I took the tools that I had put in my tool belt climbing up that I had learned. I took them down in the valley as I started the next climb. So resilience, training, learning, experiencing all of these things that cause failure and success, I tried to put those principles into each of the stories that I hope are entertaining that I tell in my book. The harder I fall, the higher I bounce.
Well, where can do you have your own website?
I do. It's maxjamesauthor.com. www.maxjamesauthor.com.
Would you spell it out for our audience?
maxjamesauthor.com. www.maxjamesauthor.com.
I'm going to ask you a question, which is off the subject, but you said about you and your wife.
Yeah.
In your book, or tell us about your relationship with your wife, because if you have the ups and downs, she's got to have it with you.
Boy, is that true. There's some special challenges, and fortunately, a lot of books have been written about partners. My dad used to tell me that a partnership of two is one too many. Well, I don't think that's always true, but you need to choose your partners carefully. I had started this business in 1997 at the age of 55. So Ray Kroc and I have that in common. Okay, that's when he started McDonald's. So never too late. So I was 55 years old in 97. And then in 2002, the operations chief that I had running my company at that point in time she wasn't up to standard. And so I had to let her go. And I was looking for another replacement. And a friend of mine said, I have just the lady for you. So in 2002, I hired Linda Johansson from Salt Lake City, originally from Boston. And in 2007, I married Linda Johansson James. She was so talented, so people-oriented, so detail-oriented. A lot of the talents that I really didn't have. You always tried to, balance up. And it has been a wonderful relationship ever since. And so 2007, and now it's 2021, she stayed, and I retired. She said, I'm not retiring. I'm too young to retire. And so now she has her own companies, International Retail Consulting and Management, and is very successful on her own. In the meantime, we didn't get to walk the beach hand in hand in retirement.
Well, I was just talking to somebody on Saturday that said his wife threw him out of the house after he retired. So,
well, don't you remember that saying, Don? I married you for better or worse, but not for lunch.
Yeah, but we have we got a little time left. Let's. What's your favorite chapter in the book?
Oh my goodness. I think it would. I'd be torn between two.
Tell us both.
Yeah, the first one would be my favorite and first mentor, and that's the foundation and the heritage that I got from my dad, and from the years up to the age of 17. It was just a fabulous foundation. There's some really funny stories in there, by the way, about being on the farm and learning from my dad and his method. And then I guess the second favorite.
Well, can I ask you the question?
Yeah.
I thought at 17, I thought my father was pretty dumb. Now that I'm 21, amazing how much he's learned. Did you feel that way?
I had, that's part of the culture, I think, but I had tremendous respect for my dad then. But I did not want to be a farmer. I hated the farm. I didn't like it at all. And one day my dad said, you really don't like this farming, do you? And I said, Dad, I got to tell you, I hate it. He said, fine. I was 13, I think. He said, go to town and get yourself a job. And I said, whoa, wait a second. who's going to take my place? And he said, with his fingers pointed at me, he said, that's not your problem. I'll handle it. So I went off to town and got a job. So I had tremendous respect for him. I did not appreciate then as much as I do now what all I learned from him. And also, and this is an embarrassment to me, I didn't appreciate how much sacrifice he was making in support of me, particularly after my mother died. We moved from a great little white house up on a hill looking out over the farm that he had managed to acquire at that time. We moved into the attic of a lady that lived in town. There was one bed, no closets, just a steel rod to hang our clothes on. Down a rickety staircase to a kitchen that had a steel shower and a steel sink and a little stove and one little sitting room. And that was so I could get to school. And Dad would get up every morning, make me breakfast, and he would drive his old truck off to the farm so that I could walk to school. Now that's a sacrifice. And there's more in the book about some of the really heartstrings pulling sacrifices that my dad made. The second chapter would be, I think, the end, where I talk about how important character is and how much I've tried to give back to developing particularly adolescent character. The culture that young folks come out of today is very different than the culture that I came out of. And yet we still have to have leaders of character so that they can protect this nation, and they're willing to give their life. They become warriors, if you will, for peace. And we need leaders of character in those political and military positions. And I talk a lot about that and what I've tried to do with my good fortune about building character. And I try to sprinkle it throughout the book that I don't, if you get a wrong hire, cut your loss early. We hired for character, trained for skill. You didn't necessarily have to have all the skills to do the job, but if you had good character, enthusiasm, and morality and integrity, then we could teach you the skills. So I think the emphasis toward the end of the book on character probably means more to me. I just hope that these stories, each one has principles that are outlined in the book, that they help others who are hoping to become a big success. And success is not just money, it's service, being able to give back in meaningful ways. In fact, the greatest book ever written, sold more copies, more languages than any, right? The Bible says if you give, it comes back 10 times. I absolutely believe that. In fact, another place in there it says if you give, it comes back 100-fold. That, I think, is an axiom. It's always been true in my life.
Amen. I couldn't agree with you more.
Thank you, Don.
One other quick thing.
Sure.
What's the patch on your
Oh, that's the Air Force Academy patch.
Oh, okay.
I'm awfully proud of what the Academy did for me, and I've given back substantially to the Academy. And right now I'm volunteering as on the committee for the foundation. I'm on the board of directors of the foundation there, and the CCLD, Committee for Character and Leadership Development. And we've built a $40-something million iconic structure so that the world will know that we at the Air Force Academy have a huge emphasis on leaders of character. Character is critical, character is important. And this building won architectural awards before we started construction. So I'm really proud of that, and continuing to work hard on that, and with the foundation to raise more money to add a measure of excellence to the cadet experience at the Air Force Academy. So yeah, I gotta have that on. But I'm proud of that. Oops.
Okay. We have to cut it short, but one more time, your book and where people can get it.
The best bet is to go on Amazon Books, and you either put in my name or the name of the book. The Harder I Fall, the Higher I Bounce. The harder I fall, the higher I bounce. And by the way, we're already, the book was released by Amazon on 5th of December, and we're already #1 bestseller in 9 categories and in 4 countries. So we're pretty proud of the book, and I hope that the people are entertained, and I hope that they learn something that will be helpful to them.
Well, on that note, we have to, Max, cut it short. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I never served, so I can't return this salute.